It can be hard balancing taking care of kids, senior loved ones, and yourself. Remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a reason 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Find background-checked sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to senior meal prep. Whether you need full-time, part-time, or even occasional help, you can view rates and book highly rated caregivers that fit your budget and schedule. Get the help you need with Care.com.
1.
7 things you don't really need to know, but probably should. I'm Jamie East, and this is the Sunday 7. On today's episode of the award-winning Sunday 7, we explore what went wrong with Boeing's Starliner. Will Guyatt gives us the heads up on Apple's next big event. We find out more about wonder drug Ozempic and take a trip with the elephant family. And remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, please do like and share, or maybe even leave a review. We're here 7 days a week with the Smart 7, the biggest stories every morning at 7 a.m. And before we start today, it was on this day in 1854 that Dr. John Snow made a dramatic and simple public health intervention in London that had a huge impact on an outbreak of cholera. He removed the handle from the Broad Street water pump after he'd mapped cholera outbreaks in London and tracked the source to one particular street. It turned out there was sewage contamination in that well, and the outbreak was almost immediately ceased. There's still a pub called the John Snow on the site, and a pink granite slab marks the site where the pump once stood. Just remember to wash your hands.
7.
It's been a strange week in space. We've been following the saga of Boeing's Starliner, a spacecraft intended to become the new space shuttle used for transporting crew up and back to the International Space Station and part of the setup for NASA's Project Artemis, which will see more moon landings and eventually a trip to Mars. However, the Starliner's had an extremely difficult existence so far, delayed for years while Elon Musk's rival SpaceX raced ahead with its Dragon crew capsule. The Starliner brought 2 astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, up to the ISS in June. They were only supposed to be there for 8 days, but have been stuck up in space ever since. NASA and Boeing's engineers were concerned about issues with Starliner's thrusters and decided to try and return it to Earth without a crew on Friday evening, while Butch and Sonny will be waiting until February 2025 to return home on a SpaceX Dragon. It's all quite embarrassing for Boeing, but on Monday, the Starliner was making news all over again as Butch Wilmore reported hearing a weird noise on board.
It's a strange noise coming through the speaker, and I didn't know if you could connect into the Starliner and let me keep mic and let you hear it. I don't know what's making it, but I don't know if it's something that maybe is connected between here and there, making that happen. But anyway, can you do that?
We can configure that, Butch. Give us a minute, and I'll call you back when it's ready.
Okay.
Station Houston on 2, we're configured for audio via hardline and CST, if you want to give us a call.
Okay, I'm in Starliner, and how do you read? Okay, I'm going to keep the mic up next to the speaker.
Copy.
Hear that?
All right, Butch, it was kind of like a pulsing noise, almost like a sonar ping.
On Friday night, the Starliner was undocked from the space station and returned to Earth without a crew. There were some nervous moments, particularly when one of the thrusters appeared to misfire briefly, but ultimately the vessel landed safely in the New Mexico desert. NASA held a press conference after the successful return, but there was no Boeing representative in sight. And while they were certainly relieved that the Starliner had landed safely, Steve Sitch, the manager of the commercial crew program at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, was still standing over the decision to return without Butch and Sonny.
Yeah, I think it's always hard to have that retrospective look. You know, we made the decision to have an uncrewed flight based on what we knew at the time. If we'd have had a model that would have predicted what we saw tonight perfectly, yeah, it looks like an easy decision to go say we could have had a crewed flight, but we didn't have that. So I think we made the right decision to not have Butch and Sonny on board. It was a test flight, and we didn't have confidence with the certainty of the thruster performance, and that's really what led us to choose to have the uncrewed test flight.
Eric Berger from the Ars Technica website says this mission's going to create long-term issues for Boeing and their role in NASA's commercial spaceflight program.
This commercial crew program now really dates back to 2014 when Boeing and SpaceX both won contracts from NASA for these services. And at the time, Boeing was really the gold standard in human spaceflight. Everyone at NASA felt that way, and SpaceX felt they were kind of taking a flyer on. And now, for 10 years later, for SpaceX to have to fly up and bring Butch and Sonny back eventually because NASA didn't feel Starliner was safe enough for its crew. That is really a devastating blow to Boeing and its position in spaceflight. So it's important to see how they recover from this.
6.
Incredible as it may seem, it's already September, and that means it's nearly time for a new iPhone. Hey! Monday sees a new Apple event scheduled at their Cupertino headquarters, and this one has a theme called Glow Time. When it comes to Apple, and indeed any kind of high-tech fruit, there's only one man we can call. The Smart 7's tech guru and high-tech greengrocer, Will Guyatt. Will, what have Apple got in store for us on Monday?
After all these years, I'm still nervous to predict what Apple are revealing, yet we know there's going to be some new iPhones, and it's likely there will be some updates and improvements to the Apple Watch. But until Tim Cook steps on stage, we don't get the actual detail. And over the last few years, it's largely been incremental updates, smallish performance improvements year on year, which make a real difference when you compare a 3-year-old iPhone to the one you're currently going to upgrade to. Based on what we know and some of the rumours, Apple's going to go big on its attempt at integrating AI into their tech this year, which Google and Samsung have already made great play of in their premium phone models. Now, Apple has promoted this as Apple Intelligence, and what we saw a few months back at their Worldwide Developer Conference was a really good indication of what we're expecting. Let's say your friend is flying in for the weekend. The phone could save the dates into your calendar automatically and would also update you on what time they were expected to land if it was told the flight number. It's a bit like finally having your own personal assistant, although various tech companies have been saying that for as long as I can remember.
I don't know about you, but it seems there's a bit less excitement about new iPhones these days. Are we expecting any major new tech in the 16th iteration?
There is less excitement, but that's because we've had over 15 years of these big Apple tech announcements, and despite the complete transformation of the tech inside the phone, it still kind of looks the same as smartphones have looked for years. It's hard for your average person to get more excited about a boost of megapixels to the camera, or the fact that a clever tech in Cupertino, California has managed to eke an extra 7.2% life from the battery. The reality is, though, that over the last 5 years or so, Apple has completely taken control of the tech inside its phones, from designing the chips themselves to having them created exclusively for the company. I think we'll see some of the usual updates: new camera features, better video, improved screen and graphical capability. But this time I think we're going to see some fairly big boosts in the power of the phone, because the iPhone's going to need more of this to deliver the AI functions it's previously demoed. It's understood that only the top-end iPhone 15 Pro from the previous generation will have the guts to power the new Apple AI, so it's going to have to step up all its new devices if it wants everybody to get involved in the so-called AI revolution.
What else have they got up their sleeves? I'm hearing talk about new AirPods.
I promise you would be the first to know if I knew exactly what was up Apple's sleeves, but there has been rumours of an upgraded Apple TV device and a suggestion we might see a new generation of Mac Mini desktop computer, which would be the smallest Mac ever made. But we'll never really know until we get told. It also feels like it's time for new iPods. It's been around 18 months since the last launch if you don't count the switch to a USB-C charger. And on the AirPod front, there's a suggestion that Apple will have several different versions now, a cheaper and a premium model. The premium one is likely to have better active noise cancellation and a louder speaker in the charging case to help you find it when you drop it down the sofa. But if you're an AirPods Pro or fan of the mega expensive AirPod Max, you'll likely be waiting to 2025 for updates. But as usual, I could have egg or maybe even apple sauce on my face thanks to these predictions by 8 PM on Monday night.
And incredibly, it's been 10 years since the Apple Watch was launched. Are they going to celebrate?
There's a rumour which appears to be gaining traction amongst some of the Apple's websites of an Apple Watch X to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the device. But so far, this only seems to be based on the idea that Apple named the iPhone X the iPhone X when it launched at its anniversary. Bloomberg, who are traditionally less starry-eyed about hardware predictions, reckon that a new Apple Watch this year will be thinner and could potentially have a new magnetic strap, which would free up space in the watch itself. They've also suggested that the Apple Watch will be available in larger models, those closer to the screen size of the current Ultra.
Now, you and I talk about our dear friend Elon Musk quite a lot on this podcast, and he's continually ranting about free speech over on X, but it turns out his Tesla cars are very useful for the police. What's going on?
In what many will see as a turn-up for the books, Mr. Freedom of Speech himself is finding that his electric cars are becoming increasingly well known for essentially being rolling surveillance devices. They're full of cameras and sensors that capture a lot of real-time data about what's happening around them, and we're now seeing cops taking this large amount of data from Teslas and using it in their investigations, to such an extent that Teslas are now being scooped up for digital evidence. In Oakland, California, the police are now routinely towing Teslas that may be parked close to local crimes. Typically they'll ask the owner first, but in some cases they'll whip the car off of a court-ordered warrant. In a recent case, a woman was shot and killed after a group of men opened fire on each other in the street. Police captured video from a nearby Tesla car, and 2 men were arrested and charged with murder. It would appear that the Chinese have been across the privacy threat posed by Teslas for quite a while. Several years ago, they banned them from being near certain government buildings or personnel.
And finally, before you head off, we see QR codes pretty much everywhere now. And it seems like people have finally understood how they work, apart from my mum. But that's including criminals, right?
Yeah, remember that short period of time when we all used to click on a QR code and get really excited about how it could possibly work? Well, it appears now it's super easy to create these codes on any device and print them out. This is now being utilised by criminals too. On parking meters worldwide, we're hearing that QR codes are being switched to websites that impersonate the official payment site, and that they either steal money you thought you were paying for parking with, or even take your payment details in an effort to hack your accounts. So from now on, I'd say keep an eye on what you're scanning. If the QR code looks dodgy or stuck on, just download the app or go visit the official website. Don't be lazy and click on the QR code.
Still to come on the Sunday 7, the impact of climate change on Korean kimchi, and could a Zempic turn out to be a super drug? We live in difficult times, with Russia waging war in Ukraine and Israel at war with Hamas in Gaza, which has led to thousands of deaths and destruction on a frightening scale. The disruption of normal life, including civil society and basic requirements like heat, power and water, has had a terrible effect on civilian populations, particularly in Gaza, where Israeli bombing has left cities and towns in rubble. That kind of chaos gives rise to serious public health issues, and this week has seen pauses in the fighting in Gaza as the World Health Organization has begun an emergency polio vaccination program. It came after the first case of polio was reported there recently, and this is a highly infectious disease which can cause paralysis or death and has no treatment available. But thanks to vaccinations, it's all been stamped out, but the risk of an outbreak in Gaza prompted swift action. The vaccine's administered in 2 rounds to children under 10, the first dose now and the second in 4 weeks' time. And Dr. Deepak Kumar is a technical officer at the World Health Organization, and he explains here the logistics of delivering those vaccines in a war zone.
We have received more than 1.2 million doses of NOPV2 vaccine, and approximately 400,000 doses are en route. These doses have been maintained in the cold chain, and these will be transported to the various distribution points in the middle area.
There have been pauses in the fighting this week to ensure the programme can carry out its work, and the WHO estimates almost 200,000 children have received their first dose. Dr. Deepak says this is very encouraging.
We are seeing a lot of enthusiasm from the community. Children are coming and they're really excited to receive the vaccination from the vaccinators here. So it's very encouraging that the start of the campaign is quite positive.
It's not just Gaza that's seen an uptick in dangerous diseases. As Dr. Luke Moore, an infectious diseases specialist at Imperial College London, explains, he says it appears the war in Ukraine is leading to a spread of antibiotic-resistant superbugs, partly because the public health systems are struggling to cope with the level of injuries sustained in conflict.
As much as I wish this was a rare circumstance, unfortunately, as we're moving through this decade and the conflict and catastrophe that's happening globally, we're seeing more and more of these resistant pathogens in these citizens who are coming to our shores. Even in 2024, there's still far more harm to global citizens from a lack of access to antibiotics rather than there being an unuseful excess of antibiotics. So there is a balance there. We need to enable those citizens who have true bacterial infections in many areas of the world. We need to enable them to have access to antibiotics, but in exactly the same breath, many high-income, high-resource settings of the world, there is still an excess of antibiotic use, which is complex. It's a wicked problem.
The rise of the semaglutide class of drug may significantly change our health over the next few years. That's the official name for brands such as Ozempic and Wegovy that started life as a means to treat type 2 diabetes and then became wildly popular as a weight loss solution. They're now available on the NHS for about £200 a month, and while they might work as a weight loss drug for everyone, new research suggests they might also be effective against a range of other conditions. A study this week shows that the semaglutides are also effective at treating cardiovascular issues with a reduced risk of stroke, and it's been shown to reduce the risk of mortality from COVID-19. There's also a suggestion that it may have a positive impact on inflammatory diseases like arthritis and may even help patients with Alzheimer's. There's been a lot of media excitement about this, with some describing it as a potential fountain of youth which could even slow ageing. Professor Bryan is the Chief Scientific and Medical Officer at the British Heart Foundation, and he told Channel 4 News that it appears the drug does have huge potential.
If you are overweight, and particularly if you're extremely overweight and you develop type 2 diabetes as well, then we already know that shortens life, and the shortening of life is due to a range of conditions, mainly cardiovascular disease and kidney disease, but also things like cancer that are associated with aging. So that's where the claim has come from. My sense is that what these studies are showing is that the accumulation of fat in the body sets off a whole range of processes that are detrimental to our health and that have far-reaching consequences.
Still to come on the Sunday 7, the perils of TikTok addiction for teens and an extraordinary elephant exhibition hits the road. Right after this.
It can be hard balancing taking care of kids, senior loved ones, and yourself. Remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a reason 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Find background-checked sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to senior meal prep. Whether you need full-time, part-time, or even occasional help, you can view rates and book highly rated caregivers that fit your budget and schedule. Get the help you need with Care.com.
Welcome back. You probably can't think of an immediate connection between Squid Games and climate change, but guess what? Yes, there is one. South Korean pop culture has been having a prolonged moment, from K-pop acts to Korean drama, including the supermassive Netflix hit Squid Games, and that interest has led to an explosion in the popularity of the traditional dish kimchi. It's a Korean specialty, and while different versions exist, the most traditional form is made with fermented and flavoured Napa cabbage. However, the Napa cabbage only grows in cooler climates and has traditionally been planted in mountainous regions, but now rising temperatures are putting the precious crops at risk. Kim Si-gup is a 71-year-old Napa cabbage farmer, and he says he can see his crop of Highland cabbage is being directly affected as the planet warms up.
I can feel that a climate crisis is approaching. There are many signs, but to give a representative example, take Maebong San Mountain in Taebaek County, which can be considered the origin of Highland cabbage in our country. However, the cultivation area there has fallen by half because of soil diseases and viruses that thrive in high temperatures.
Government projections suggest that if temperatures continue to rise, Korean cabbage growers will struggle to produce enough crops to meet demand. So science is coming to the rescue, developing new varieties of that cabbage that are intended to be heat and disease resistant. Lee Young-gyu is a plant pathologist at the National Institute of Crop Science, and he says protecting the national delicacy is a priority.
We are also looking into watering methods that could help lower temperatures and, as I mentioned earlier, expanding the use of biological control methods to combat the newly emerging half-wilt disease. Additionally, since highland areas are typically sloped, we are researching cultivation techniques that allow for stable farming on slopes. Given the rising temperatures, we are also working on developing cabbage varieties that can grow well, even in higher temperatures.
One of the great social shifts lately has been the impact of social media on our lives, from Mark Zuckerberg's original college dorm creation of the Facebook to the constantly online world of X and TikTok, Instagram and Twitch that we seem to live in now. But there's increasing concern over the impact that being so online has on our lives, particularly on the lives of our children. From cyberbullying to harmful content to smartphone addiction, there's a growing awareness that the smartphone and the entertainment it provides may prove to be harmful in the long term. Elon Musk's free speech approach to Twitter, now X, has led to a surge of misinformation and disinformation that arguably played a key role in the recent rioting and public disturbances. And regulators in the UK, Europe and the US are becoming increasingly focused on the way that social media platforms behave, and in particular how their behaviour and content affects kids. There's a growing movement to restrict access to phones for kids and teens, at least in school, although there's a case to be made for banning screens entirely for younger children. Tara Porter is a clinical psychologist, and she says it's really important to realise just how addictive smartphones and the content kids find on them can be.
The phone is so sticky, it's so appealing to children, it can be so addictive that we really have to think about scaffolding them into healthy phone use. And, we're only beginning to understand what the issues are. Increasingly, when people do studies with kids, they don't seem to mind as much as we think they mind. What they mind is if their phone is taken away and nobody else's is, because then they're out of the social group. They've got no way of talking to their friends if everyone else is on their phone. So I agree, I think consistency and regularity and rules are really important in the school setting.
Mankind and elephants, or their cousins the woolly mammoths, have coexisted for hundreds of thousands of years. However, as man expands, elephants have found themselves under threat from poaching, from reduced jungle and wildlands, and of course from climate change. One woman is determined to fight the elephant's corner though, and that's Ruth Ganesh, who's the principal trustee of UK NGO Elephant Family, whose mission is to help protect the Asian elephant. Over the last 50 years, the population of Asian elephants has halved and 90% of their traditional habitat has vanished. The Elephant Family charity focuses on raising awareness through creative conservation projects and counts King Charles and Queen Camilla among their supporters. Now, Ruth's taking her passion for elephants to the US with a new travelling exhibition of 100 elephant sculptures designed to raise awareness and gain support for the magnificent beasts.
It's a real issue in conservation worlds, this coexistence issue, and how to solve that overlap as we continue to put in trains and roads and towns. So unless we want to live in a sort of zoo world where you only go and see elephants behind fences or animals behind fences, you've got to figure out how to overlap again.
The dramatic sculptures are created by indigenous artists in India, and co-founder of Exhibit Tars Takaykara explains they're not just beautiful creations, they're also made using a local vine called lantana, which is toxic to elephants and makes it harder for them to find food in the wild.
I think the biggest problem is lantana. It suppresses the growth of all the other native vegetation that animals used to eat. So once lantana completely takes over an area, there's nothing left for animals to eat, and that forces them out of the forests more. It gives people a livelihood and it clears lantana from the forest. So it's a kind of win-win situation for both the people and nature.
This has been the Sunday 7. Wherever you're listening, do us a favour and hit the follow button. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the regular Smart 7. Have a great rest of your weekend. Written, produced and published by Daft Doris.
Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes, shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.